True black glossy OLED. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the day I've been waiting for the last few months, because inside this box contains the latest and next generation of Asus gaming monitor that is not only OLED but features their brand new coating that aims to give you the best of both worlds. So less reflections than you're going to get with a standard glossy, but then much better image quality than you're going to get with one of those, I say, horrible matte coatings. As we've discussed many times before, depends whether you're team matte or team glossy. This aims to be the best of both. So throughout this video, we're going to get this thing unboxed. We're going to get it set up. We're going to show you all of the differences between all of the different coatings. And then of course, we're going to show you exactly what this thing is like to game on and give you my full impressions. As I say, I'm extremely excited for this. I've got very high hopes. I really don't want them to be dashed, but let's find out whether this thing actually is any good right after a short word from this video's sponsor. Introducing the new Gigabyte A16, the wallet-friendly gaming laptop that's better than ever. Now equipped with up to an RTX 5070 laptop GPU, you get faster frame rates, access to DLSS 4 AI upscaling, and multi-frame generation smarts. It rocks a super fast 165Hz display, ideal for multiplayer, and even goes up to 2560 by 1600 on the top set model. Get your game on today for less with the Gigabyte A16. Learn more with a link below. Rightio then, as my old chemistry teacher once said, let's get cracking and actually see what this thing is all about. And if you're not aware, that was a joke about hydrocarbons. Oh, Editor Carl's probably watching this guy. Oh, he's being lame again. He's being lame. But that's what I do. We love it. Or at least I do. Oh, and obviously I know it would look better to properly unbox this on the disc, but I'd rather not have a broken monitor. But don't worry, everyone.
There's still time.
Inside the box, look, you get everything that you would pretty much expect. If you haven't really been into gaming monitors for a while, then typically Asus, you have to spend a little bit more for them compared to some of its competition, but everything is often, emphasis on often, rather overbuilt. I mean, this is actually part of their Strix lineup rather than the absolute top end. So I imagine it will not be like as solid metal as you'll get with something like the PG32 UCDM. But then obviously that means that everything should be slightly cheaper. But I mean, this base is metal. This is quite plasticky. It's powered with a brick rather than straight into the display, which personally I think is better because it gives you a little bit extra reach. And then you get this accessory bag that should have all of the cables that we need, including power, European power, HDMI, and DisplayPort. But I am fully aware that you guys have probably seen an HDMI cable before, so let's get to the bit that we're all here for, shall we? And this actually should give you a very good idea straight out of the gate about what it is that we're dealing with here. So can you see already a difference versus some of the other monitors that we've tested on the channel? Now, to be fair, we have actually moved the lights around slightly, but I'm not getting that purple haze that we were getting before. That's one of the big differences that you're going to notice with the panel on this versus some of the ones that have like a standard gloss. Less purpley, but of course we're not going to be able to actually see what this is like, so we get a stand on it and get it plugged in. This literally just hooks in like that, and then the base goes on. Screw in by hand, and then the whole thing is ready to go. I do actually have a whole host of other OLED monitors in the studio at the moment, so we can do a direct comparison. So this is probably the most notable, because if you want to go for a matte finish, you pretty much still have to go for a matte finish. This is still a different look, and it's going to have different benefits and different sacrifices essentially. Whereas obviously if you go for a normal gloss, this aims to just be better than that, full stop. But obviously the party will not properly get started until we get these aimed at the light source. So yes, there it is. Straight out of the gate, you can all, well, I've got a tiny little monitor here and it's very obvious. So I imagine by the time you're watching this on your big screen, that should be very noticeable. This is the whole point really. Obviously this is the most raw test you're gonna get. It will look different once we turn it on, but this is just the panel coating talking here and nothing else. And you can see just how much blacker this display is. There is still a tiny amount of purple up here, but then when you compare that to the whole screen essentially being purple on this one, it's an absolutely massive difference. I mean, you've still got the reflections, and to be fair, if anything, the reflection is actually kind of a little bit more sharp and in focus on this one, but you're just not getting that purple haze and diffraction that you're seeing on the old-fashioned style of doing it. So that is very, very interesting, isn't it? And I think that whole thing of qd-oled having raised blacks, again, we've got to do a whole lot more testing, but that is a massive step forward already, isn't it? That's exciting. Let's get the old smartphone out though and see if that makes much difference. So again, you can still see kind of like that purple haze there, but then as soon as we bring it on to this one, it's not like completely gone, is it? I can still see it a little bit, but way, way more noticeable And then, as I say, as soon as you get the image actually on this, I think it will change it completely again. And I still don't know why, by the way, but this ASRock OLED that I have here, this is a w-oled panel, so using one of LG displays. This is just so light. I don't understand how this is so much lighter than all the other monitors, but yes, it's worth noting in case you're wall mounting it or something. But yes, let's get these all facing, shall we? The same reflection. So you can now see side by side exactly the difference that you're going to get with every single one of these panels. So the best handling, if you like, you could argue is the matte panel, but you've still got a really big blob in the middle of your screen. It's just going to spread out a little bit more, and once it's on, it's arguably a little bit less noticeable, but obviously it does depend on the angle. But here, I mean, I'll be honest, that still doesn't look great, does it? That's still a lot of the screen taken up by horribleness. Then you've got this one that is arguably the darkest reflection actually of all of them, but then you do get that purple haze here that, as I say, can affect the rest of the screen. And then this is kind of, I don't want to say the middle ground, but this is kind of just this but better, really, isn't it? It's slightly brighter in terms of the reflection that you're going to get, but then you really do get that true black everywhere. But if I get rid of the reflection for you, just so you can see like that, it's hard for me to say here looking at the screen exactly the differences, but obviously you can see at home. So what do you make? Let us know down in the comment section below. Which of these finishes do you think handles reflections the best? We'll do the old smartphone test again for you. What do you make of this? Very, very interesting. Actually completely different. But let's get this powered on, shall we? Hopefully it will spring into life. It's already telling me to adjust the default power consumption, because if you didn't know, most monitors, especially HDR ones that come out now, they will actually ship in a mode that uses less power, I think for like regulations or something like that. But as soon as you turn that off, you'll get obviously much like brighter brights, and especially HDR, it's a game changer. You basically have to turn it on. But let's get ourselves logged in and actually have a look, shall we? And this is quite a good image, actually. This is just one of the default Windows preloaded ones that they get from online or whatever it is. But obviously this is going to be perfect for OLED. So we've barely talked about the specs about this. I've been too excited about the coating. It comes in two different flavors. It's 4K no matter what, but you can get it in either 240 Hertz or 165. I imagine the 165 will be a little bit cheaper, but otherwise I'm told they're basically the same. But I don't want to say I believe it when I see it, but I will believe it when I see it. Obviously the advantages really with OLED is that you're going to get these true blacks that you can only get because the pixels themselves will shut off, and you don't have to worry about a backlight kind of leaking into the surrounding cells essentially. But one of the problems that you'll find, and one of the reasons we're talking about coatings today, is because we've perfected the image quality so that black is black, but then we actually need to talk about the other things to make the black look as black as it should be, because even if we can record a perfect black, it doesn't mean that's what the eye will actually see. But I think you can already see, can't you, just how much better this looks versus the old style. I mean, it depends on your room, because obviously if you've not really got many light sources and you either game or watch movies or something in a dark room, especially if you mainly play in the evening, it's a lot less of an issue. But if you play inside, and you obviously play inside, if you play inside a room that's really bright, you play during the day, that's when obviously going for a matte panel is probably going to make more sense to people that kind of have a lot of lights and things. Maybe have those blinds, like slatted blinds, and they give those horrible lines on the screen. That's still gonna, as we've seen, still gonna affect this kind of display, but the actual negative associations that you're gonna get with the panel coating, that shouldn't affect the image quality so much. That's the point of this. It's not necessarily to get rid of reflections, it's just to make sure that the coating doesn't affect the image quality as much as possible. But let's get this set to the full native refresh rate, and then we'll go on our favorite site for testing monitors, Blur Busters, in particular the ghosting camera. So this is not going to look as good as some of the other monitors because this is only 165 Hertz, so it's not going to be the same as the 240 version, the 360s, the 480s, you get the idea. But this is also a dual mode monitor, both of them are, and if you set this to 1080p, then it will refresh faster and the UFO will be a little bit sharper, which obviously means that when you're playing games and you're moving the camera around, you're going to get less motion blur. That's the point essentially. But it kind of depends on the rig that you're using, because if you're using a 5090 like we're using for our test rig here, then yes, there's probably going to be a lot of games, especially multiplayer, where you can go above 165 Hertz and you'll see a decent advantage. Whereas if you're maybe rocking something a little bit less, you're trying to buy a monitor and a graphics card or a PC at the same time, then obviously this is where it makes sense, especially if you're playing single player games and things, because you really don't need more than 120 FPS, if that, for a lot of single player games. But I imagine this is going to be very good for Battlefield. I mean, the thing with OLED as well that you've got to remember is that it's just so much better than an LCD for response time, that even though it's not necessarily going to have this same kind of feel and response time in the game because you're getting less FPS pumped into the screen, but visually, the way it looks, I would say that 165 Hertz on an OLED kind of looks like 260, 300 FPS or so on an LCD. But obviously it depends on the LCD and to some extent depends on the OLED as well. Oh, but ladies and gentlemen, I think the time for talk is well and truly over because it is Battlefield 6 open beta, which means we can jump straight in to the Battlefield. And obviously this is the sort of title where you are going to want to have the highest frame rate possible, but because of the CPU demands of a title like this, I don't think even if you had like a 1440p, 480 or 500 Hertz display, I don't think you'd be getting anywhere near that in terms of frame rate, but you're more than welcome to try. So this being 4K, 165 Hertz, obviously that is your target. I'd always aim to have like your lows to be around about 165 in a multiplayer game, so adjust your settings really so you're over 165, but ideally not going below it really, unless obviously you wanted to use the G-Sync compatibility or FreeSync or whatever it is of your display. It's a great looking game though, it looks really, really nice. We're running this on an RTX 5090 and we currently have DLSS set to quality, but otherwise we have everything set to ultra, which is nice. But this is a game that's quite scalable, so you don't have to be running a 5090 to obviously get great performance on this, but the frame rate at the moment is 170, 175 FPS. So as I say, it's obviously going to be great on an RTX 5090, but if you were to go for the 240 Hertz version, you would have to turn some settings down in order to get that and have probably a 7800 or a 9800 X3D. In this particular rig, we do have a 7800 X3D, so the frame rate could be slightly higher, but as I say, 165 is the limit of this monitor anyway. But let's now move on to what genuinely has to be the hardest thing about monitor testing, which is trying to walk you through the experience whilst playing and trying not to suck at the same time. I'll do my best, but as I say, it's not very easy. Now, obviously this is OLED, so the contrast that you get on screen is absolutely fantastic, and the clarity associated with this glossy finish is fantastic. Now, I think on the cameras you're seeing, you probably can see some reflections actually from my blinds, but that's not what I'm seeing at the moment. What I'm seeing has no reflections on it whatsoever. But that obviously does give you quite a good indication that, again, if you were in a room that had like quite a lot of light sources and things, then you will have to make quite a few adjustments in order to actually have the monitor set up in a way that you are happy with. But assuming you can do that, the clarity on this is exceptional. Really, really good. As I say, it's OLED, so you're getting plenty of clarity there as well. And actually, the 32-inch screen and form factor, I think is perfect for 4K. I've actually been testing a lot of 27 inches recently, and it's not that they're in any way bad, quite the opposite really. Obviously they're even sharper than this, but I think you need 32 inches of screen size to be able to properly appreciate this. Otherwise, to be honest with you, you can just get away with a 1440p display. It depends what you're using it for, but obviously you get a higher frame rate with that anyway. But for me personally, I would want to go either ultra-wide or 32-inch with this resolution. And I'll tell you what, I do want to try and talk about the fluidity and the input lag of this monitor, but this really is chaos, this game mode, that makes it very, very difficult to do so. But I hope this does come across properly on camera, just how smooth and fluid this really is, despite the fact that relative to a lot of OLED monitors, this is obviously not as high refresh rate as it can be. I mean, just moving the mouse around, you just don't feel like there's, not that there's any resistance, but I always say having a really good monitor and having a really good mouse makes such a big difference, because obviously these are the things that kind of are your only input device, if you like, and the only way to actually change what's going on in game. And if you have a monitor that's really laggy, then obviously when you're moving the mouse around, it doesn't quite line up with what's actually going on in the game world. But yeah, this is a really great experience actually. And again, having that 32-inch form factor in a game like this where there really is quite a lot going on, I think it does allow you to kind of just be a bit more self-aware potentially, which can especially help if you're maybe like a sniper shooting into the distance or something. We've not got this running HDR at the moment. We'll do a little bit of testing that and a little bit later, but yeah, if you did want to play something like Battlefield on this, I think you're really going to have a good time with it actually. Color and everything as well, despite the muted tone, looks very, very good. So first impressions then in our first title, actually very, very good. I mean, it's similar to what I've used before, absolutely, but obviously you get slightly better clarity thanks to that coating. But this is also one of those monitors that if you want to go even further and have an even faster refresh rate, then you can do that. And the menu system as well, I'll quickly say, is so responsive. I don't think I've ever used a monitor that feels quite like this. I mean, obviously, like it's a menu, right? It's not exactly the most cutting edge feature in the world. Loads of cool stuff in here. You've got OLED care and things as well. I am due to actually update the firmware on this monitor, I'll say that. The reason I say that is because I turned on it's got like a proximity sensor here. So the idea is that you get up, you walk away, and then the monitor goes black, so you're not kind of burning it in as much. And when you add that up over the years of use, it can make a massive difference. But for some reason for me, it didn't do anything. I set it to 5 minutes, came back 10 minutes later, and the monitor was still on, which was annoying. I don't really understand why that was. But some feedback to ASUS anyway. If the intervals that you give are a minimum of 5 minutes, I want the monitor to turn off 30 seconds after I'm away, not like 5 minutes, because once I've made a cup of tea and come back, that probably takes me, what, 4 minutes, so that feature wouldn't really be that useful. But that aside, what I was trying to say is that you go to this setting here called frame rate boost, you turn this on, and then unfortunately your monitor is then going to look significantly worse, because obviously it goes into its 1080p mode, but on this screen it goes up to 320 FPS, whereas if you're rocking the higher end one, the 4K 240, that will go up to 480 Hertz. And it looks okay. I mean, it obviously looks significantly worse than it did before, but if you are playing competitive games, then you may well want to use this feature. It's something that we've seen on a lot of the w-oled panels actually, in 32-inch 4K flavors. It's entirely up to you, but I personally probably wouldn't use it, but let's check it out in Fortnite. And you rejoin us in the mix of the action. There is someone about. Let's see if we can actually do ourselves some damage. Our frame rate is around about 240 FPS. There's a little bit of variability here. Not entirely sure why Fortnite doesn't want to go above this. If you're playing Valorant or CS, especially on a 5090, you should expect to easily get that 300 FPS or so. But I suppose it does kind of depend as well on the CPU and the game and stuff. This is an Unreal 5 title. But the issue I have with running in this mode, it's always nice to have it, but it's just the image quality is such a big step down that it's very noticeable. In something like Fortnite, this is probably like best case scenario though, because obviously it's quite cartoony in terms of the style and the look, so it's quite easily forgiven. And if you're a very good player and obviously you're playing in like the performance mode and you want to play ranked all of the time, then I think you probably would end up using this. But personally for me, I would rather just play at 165 FPS at 4K and use upscalers and things to get there, right? But ultimately the point is that you always have the choice if you've got this monitor. I mean, this is kind of when like a 27-inch monitor with a dual mode might make more sense, because obviously it's a smaller display, so the image quality is just going to look better, surely by the nature of the fact that it is obviously smaller. Sorry about that, I was trying to clear up for a second there. It's not that bad. I've definitely seen monitors in this mode, I think, that they don't handle the kind of, it's not really upscaling, just scaling in general as well as this. Don't worry, we're reload, we can respawn. But the other reason really that I kind of wanted to show you this was just to demonstrate that even if you do have like the perfect hardware, if you like, for playing games like this, you're not always going to be able to fully max out the display, even in multiplayer. It's always going to be game dependent and obviously on the system that you have. So flexibility, as I say, is definitely a great thing. The mode works as intended, really. The input lag is definitely a little bit lower. I did test UFO, you should be seeing the B-roll now of this earlier, and there was actually quite a clear difference in terms of motion clarity at 320 versus 160, as you would expect. But in terms of like, for most people really, whilst it's going to be great to have the choice, I think you're probably going to end up just using DLSS or something at performance rather than playing this at 1080p. But again, it depends on the game, but it's certainly a nice mode to have. Whilst we're here though, I'll also show you one of the downsides of this dual frame rate mode, because let's say, all right, I don't want to run this at 330 Hertz, I want to go 4K again. The game will, it depends on the game, quite often it will just crash entirely when you kind of take it out, but other times it will do something like this, where obviously you're now running this at 1080p and the whole thing will just kind of get confused. Some games are better than others. You can see actually Fortnite actually seems to work better than expected, actually, to be fair. Yeah, I've seen a lot of games just, they will crash entirely. They're like, oh, the monitor's gone, I don't know what to do, and that's the end of it. So 9 times out of 10 you'll have to choose what game you want to play, or at least the mode you want to play before you open it up. Before we move on though to our HDR gaming test, I do also want to say, despite the fact that the REG monitors do cost a fair bit more, you do often get a couple of unique features as well with them. I mean, you know, it's give or take, always check on the exact monitor, obviously, before you buy anything. But the one I like is this one called Uniform Brightness. So I'll leave this off for a second, because as we know, OLED monitors, they can get bright, but they can't really sustain it. And one of the things that I find really annoying about using an OLED monitor for like just general desktop use or productivity productivity, is if they don't have a mode like this, and especially if you have them turned up quite bright, what you'll notice, look, is as soon as you make a white window big, the whole screen just kind of dims. And this is definitely getting better as newer monitors come out, but ASUS actually has a mode that's kind of dedicated to stopping this. Now, there is a downside with it, and that is that it actually caps the maximum brightness of the display. So if you're using this in like a really bright room, then maybe this isn't going to be quite so good. But actually for most people, I think this will be fine. You turn it on and then obviously just make sure your brightness is how you want it. And then you should now notice that when we make that window bigger, the difference in brightness, I would say it does shift ever so slightly, but it's barely anything really when you compare the before and after. So that is a really nice usability feature that I like about ROG monitors when it comes to OLED, but there's also a few other things like this new OLED anti-flicker mode as well, that especially in games like Indiana Jones, for whatever reason I found it was very prone to this, can help to prevent some of this like horrible flicker that you'll get if you're, it's partly related to like G-Sync and variable refresh rate, but yeah, you can just get this kind of annoying pulsing that you'll see on monitors, and OLEDs are just particularly prone to that. But let's press on and get our HDR enabled. And then after a surprisingly long time for shader compilation, you'll join us in some, I almost said Forza, this is Horizon Forbidden West. And I think this is one of the best sequences actually for testing HDR, because you've got a bit of everything going on here. So OLED is very good at scenes like this, where you've got quite a lot of brightness on the display, but you've got a lot of dark at the same time. It's all about contrast. Our eyes love contrast, and being able to display a scene like this and have those really nice blacks here, and definitely from the extra coating that you've got on here, it just looks jet black. It looks fantastic, but it's next to all of those brights. We love that. Obviously mix that in with the color accuracy and color volume that you're gonna get with OLED. Fantastic. This would be something that would definitely be quite difficult to do on a mini LED monitor. We go down there a little bit later, but that's where it's a lot more darkness, but then you've got a few lights that kind of need a poke through, and again, it's gonna look fantastic when you get that contrast on an OLED. But I wanna start here, which is definitely the most difficult bit for OLED monitors, which is just brightness in general. So if we did have a mini LED monitor here, I'm not convinced that it wouldn't actually look better on that display than it would here. I mean, don't get me wrong, like this looks amazing. The combination of that 4K resolution with all of the contrast, and then obviously we've got some decent amount of brightness actually in the fire. That's always a dead giveaway on some of the weaker OLED monitors. They kind of start to blend and look very similar in terms of brightness to the surrounding area, whereas this has definitely got a fair amount of pop to it. Having said that, fire is bright, and that is not looking as bright as I personally would like it to be. And I think if you viewed this on one of the very best kind of like OLED TVs, then you probably would notice that that scene there would look significantly better. Having said that, absolutely not a problem. And the scene as a whole definitely looks really, really good. No problems with that whatsoever. And again, as OLED monitors get better, this is generally what you're going to see just improve. So the differences between the highs and the lows, that's what makes a monitor good essentially. But what I was trying to say before I got distracted was if we go into image, there's a few different things we can do to actually make this look even better. So we go to HDR setting, and this is all at default at the moment, which is the display HDR 400 True Black. This is a certification. This is going to be the most accurate when we talk about like gamma curves and things, which is boring, but is important if you're using this for like mastering or you want it to look as accurate as possible. We're not really too fussed about that for gaming. We just want the best looking image overall. And the first thing you can do is actually turn on this setting called adjustable HDR. And all this does is it means you can go into the settings, and I've already done this, but you can up this to 100, because if you left this at the default, the brightness would be at 80. So just by turning on that one setting, we've now added a fair bit more brightness to the scene, and that fire now looks even more impactful. And when you look up at the sky again, it's just that extra level really. This is kind of like almost like the difference between like a Gen 1 panel and a Gen 3 panel. It's not like a crazy difference, but every bit of brightness is going to just make the image a little bit more impactful. But as I say, it will affect your gamma curve, so it's not going to look quite as accurate, and you might find that like the lows aren't quite, you might crush a few blacks and things get a little bit messed up, but I don't think you're going to notice it, whereas the overall brightness you definitely are. But having done that change, let's now go back inside and see what this does to our darker areas. Is this going to like ruin everything, or is it going to make it look even better? I mean, this still looks absolutely fantastic to me where that light pulls in, but where the party really gets started is when we go down here, look, and you can see it's mainly dark. We do just have these scenes, look, of brightness coming from the wall lights, and it just looks so good. It really does. So you'll find that OLED monitors in general can't kind of show lights for that long. They usually have like a second or two, let's say, where it's really bright and the whole thing will dim. But when you've got a smaller window of brightness, you usually find that those are the bits that can get brighter for longer. So yes, this does look good, but there are a few different other modes that you can use as well. So go to our settings, and annoyingly, when you enable one, it does take like 8 seconds or so to enable. I personally would prefer if you could just cycle through and see all of the differences in real time, because this is now quite difficult to kind of, well, you want to do a side by side almost in your head, but it's harder to actually notice the difference. But I would actually say inside here, it's personal preference really, but this definitely looks more accurate to me now. It does look like we've got more darkness to the scene. But then obviously the downside is that those highlights aren't quite as bright now. So this is going to be the common trend as we kind of move through the different modes. Let's try gaming HDR. Oh, that one seems to work. Interesting. Okay, so the display HDR 400, that's a completely different mode, look. But this is what I'm saying I want. As soon as you move to gaming, cinema, and console, you can actually adjust these in real time. Not entirely sure why that is, but let's go into our gaming mode. And yeah, that's almost like a bit of a middle ground, really. So there's subtle differences, but obviously you have a play around and find the one that works best for you. Oh, then, ladies and gentlemen, there we are. That was the gaming section of the video. Really impressive. I'd be downplaying it a little bit if I said it's kind of business as usual. It doesn't do anything drastically different when it comes to the maximum performance that this panel can actually deliver. But this, in my opinion, is still the best panel for gaming, period. There's not really anything that I personally would want more than this other than to be ultra wide. The caveat of that is that there will be plenty of people watching this saying, no, I want it to be 1440p, 480 or 500 Hertz. Fantastic, that obviously is then going to be better for you. But for me, gaming is more than just about maximum refresh rate, it's about form factor and resolution as well. But that's why it's great that we have the option between both essentially, so you can get the right gaming monitor for you, because it means different things to different people. But it's worth bearing in mind that this is a w-oled panel. Now normally, as we know, w-oled is like this. This is the ASRock LG equipped display. They're always matte essentially, whereas finally, bar a monitor we saw last year where we did have a glossy panel from ASUS, but bar that one, this obviously is the real deal with this new true black glossy coating essentially. But so I want this to be kind of like the quintessential, the definitive side by side, so you can really see the differences between the two. And I'll be honest, I kind of expected it to be more drastic during the side by side. It really is only when we kind of start to either look into the minute detail or when we do start to aim at light sources that the differences become really apparent. So if you're sitting in a pitch black room, the glossy is definitely going to look better, but that's when you're going to kind of get the minimal differences. It's all about the way that the light kind of hits the screen and reflects. And so the real step up with this one is that if you do have a light source hitting it, the diffraction, or the way that the light kind of is diffused amongst the screen, is done really well, because you've got that kind of like pinpoint image here where you can absolutely see the reflection, but that's kind of it. Whereas on the normal qd-oled monitors, or as you can see on this matte panel, it's still there, it's a little bit out of focus, but it kind of just takes up more of the display really. I mean, I'll show you with that one as well. We'll do the same here, try not to damage them. So, you know, it's kind of pick your poison in a way, but by far, the best poison to date, I would say, is this. Really impressive. And if I was going to be buying a monitor tomorrow, I'd absolutely want it to have this coating. So hopefully we see a lot more of this from ASUS. But I'll come around as well just to one final time just to kind of, again, show you the differences really, because it is subtle unless you know kind of what you're looking for. But you will notice that the blacks in the darker areas of the screen on the glossy appear blacker than you will find on the matte panel. That's the main difference really that you're going to see. It's not going to change like the color or anything. It's not really going to change the output. It is just perception. And as I say, the more light that you've got in the room, the bigger the difference potentially is going to be. But my opinion hasn't really changed. I mean, actually, let's open the blinds and ruin the lighting that we've spent so much time recently trying to perfect and look better. Hope you've noticed. And yes, obviously now you can see head to head. It's probably not going to be drastically different, but you know, that really is what it's all about. The more light that you have and the more light sources that you have in the room, the more likely a matte panel is going to aid you essentially in just cutting out some of that glare. But I don't know about you, I don't really have a massive problem in controlling the glare, even in the rooms where I'm sat next to a window because I can just shut the blinds, but each their own. Either way though, I really hope this video has been helpful. If it has, smash the like button and get yourself subscribed. If you do want to check out current pricing on this, you can find this listed down below because as I say, at the time of filming, I'm not entirely sure what it is. But I've really enjoyed testing this, and as I say, I'm going to be using this hopefully for the coming weeks just to really get into the weeds with this. But I've been really impressed, and I just want to see this coating on more monitors essentially. Of course though, there is an absolutely massive chance that this monitor, especially at launch, is going to be priced a little bit on the high side. So don't forget, we've done loads of other monitor reviews on this channel, so if you want something in a different form factor or something that's a fair bit more affordable, just hit the playlist at the end of the video, or as I say, there are links to loads of monitors that we love listed down below with our affiliate links. And while you're down there, why not check out the Gigabyte A16? This gaming laptop is properly powerful and a full portable form factor, with Nvidia's 50 series of GPUs and up to a 10-core i7 Intel CPU or 8-core Ryzen processor, all in an affordable package. It's got a super fast 165Hz 16:10 display with super slim bezels, Gigabyte's latest WindForce cooling system, and immersive Dolby Atmos audio. You can even use Gigabyte's GIMate software to let AI optimize your system or answer your PC gaming queries. Grab yours today with the link down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.